with us today. And me and Michelle have been watching Rob over the last couple months, and he puts out these little videos here and there. They're very intriguing, very interesting. And so Michelle reached out to him and decided to bring him on our platform here today. Let us talk to you a little bit about what you do, Rob, what brought you to the medicine, why you're here, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, well, it's so good to be on the live with you guys. Thank you for the
Thank
opportunity to share with people and, share some of my experiences.
you. Yep.
And that's really where I share from is my life experiences, because I believe that that's the only real thing that we can share from. The only right we have is to share from something we've experienced ourselves.
Right.
And so in that way, I consider anything I share to have either come from the experiences that Spirit and Creator has gifted me, and then also from my mentors and teachers in the human world, and then through spiritual guidance in dreams and visions and whatnot. So none of what I share is my own. I don't claim it as my own. It's simply something that I got the honor to experience.
Good. Right.
And, like in that way, this path you were asking about, that like how it started for me, and it started because there was a deep place of suffering and agony inside of myself, a dark hole of darkness, pretty much.
Hmm.
And what was that? Like, I mean, there's always so many levels to it. Where it cracked open for me and forced me to go deeper into myself is when I was 16 years old. Well, actually 14, but 16 is when my father passed away from cancer. 14 is when he was diagnosed. So I was only 16 years old, and I was sitting on the bedside of my father as he prepared to walk on to the other side. And
Right.
at the time, I had no concept of spirituality or creator or spirit.
Hmm.
However, in that moment, if you've ever been around death, it's just truth. It's truth that just slaps you in the face, because you get in touch with all those parts of ourselves that we think, that we aren't aware of. It's
Right.
like the security that we place in the external crumbles, and we're left with a lot of questions. At least I
A lot
was.
of questions. Right. A lot of questions we're left with.
And like after that experience, I was numb for a year, and I was really sick myself.
Mhm.
I was in and out of the hospital with digestive problems, and I was kind of facing my own death in some aspects. And so it was a really terrible time in my life, to be honest.
Right.
And yet inside of me, all I felt was either numbness or extreme sadness and grief and pain. And that was hard.
Yeah.
And yet inside of me, something said, that's not what this life is about. There's something more. And there's a joy and a love and a beauty to life. And it was something I've just felt like a knowing. And I didn't know how to experience that. I didn't know where that was. But that put me on a quest to find that.
Yeah.
And that took me all over the world and to all sorts of experiences so that I could find that love and joy. And so I could feel and be human.
Hmm. And then tell us a little bit about you jumped on this. Did you explore plant medicines? When was it when you started diving into plant medicines and feeling, you know, I'm just not feeling all this? When was this?
Yeah. Well, the plant medicine path opened for me as a young man, actually. Like, cannabis really helped me at that time.
Hmm.
It was probably not the most healthy tool as a
Hmm.
teenager, but it did give me like a reprieve from the intensity of the experience of losing
Yeah.
my father. It also kind of broke me out of my social anxiety. And
Hmm.
so when I was a teenager, I did work with some plant medicine, but it was really out of context, and it was not very intentional. And it wasn't until later, actually, with ayahuasca, and that really opened something up for me. And it was kind of like at that time, I didn't really know anything about ceremony. And I
Hmm.
just met some guy at a festival, or like it was at a school I was going to, an alternative school of like healing. And then we went to some festivals, and he invited me to drink ayahuasca in a ceremony he was holding. looking back, I wouldn't have done that now because he wasn't really trained by elders, or he just was in working with his own inspiration and joy. And like now I know that what I know about ceremony is it's a really intense place, and we need to be really trained and go through initiations, I believe, to be able to hold that space for other people. So, anyways, it was maybe not the safest place, but the medicine took care of me.
Right.
And she held me that night and showed me what love really was. And for the first time, I felt total bliss and total love.
Hmm.
I was only like 20 or 21. And at that time, all these external synchronicities started to, they aligned to get me to that ceremony. And then right after, I was actually right after that ceremony going to go to school and become like a chemist or something, like something really
Hmm.
important. And
Something important. Yeah.
something really, really important for the world,
Yeah.
kind of wish.
Right.
And I met this woman, and she invited me on this like epic road trip. And so then I was like, okay, well, I can either go to chemistry school or run off with this woman, 20 years old. I was like, I'm gonna run off with the woman. And
Yeah.
that ended in kind of chaos, but that's okay. That's kind of how we have to learn sometimes. And that ended up leading me on my path where I ended up meeting a lot of elders and my teachers. I ended up going to Colorado and spending a lot of time there with the Native American community, and participated in some really amazing experiences that really shaped me into the man that I am. And so I really attest to like the power of that medicine beyond the ceremony. It does something. It can open
Yeah.
paths and
Yeah.
can open us to new possibilities. And that's really when it all, in some ways, started for me.
Yeah.
But then
I,
yeah,
I have to totally. I mean, your path really seems a lot like how my beginnings have started because, like yourself, I divulged into cannabis, and I kind of thought it was the devil back then. Now, as I think about it, it was my life savior.
mhm,
Cannabis saved my life when I was younger. By all
mhm,
means, it did. Intentionally, not intentionally, it did. And then exploring and deeper diving into the ayahuasca. I mean, that was my pathway to really. I mean, that was the first time I ever felt love was through a medicine like that. I mean,
mhm.
real, true love, and it was amazing after that. I don't so much rely on Aya anymore. I mean, I think that is one of the powerful plant medicines up there in the top three. I think psilocybin is where our love is, and where I think more of the Western world needs to adapt more to, because there's some power in psilocybin. It's a very powerful tool. Macrodosing, microdosing, however we go and use this medicine, it for me, it keeps me in alignment to what that big journey gave me in the beginning. It keeps me integrating what my daily life. I don't know how you feel about this, but psilocybin for us is where we're venturing, where we think mental health really needs to go.
Yeah, and like one of the teachings that I walk with is the medicine wheel. This is something my elders talk about. And on the medicine wheel, there's the four directions, you
Hmm.
know, and they represent east, south, west, north.
Yeah.
Well, when you look at the medicine wheel, each of those directions has a color. And when you look at humans, we have four main races on the planet. We have the Native American indigenous, we have the African indigenous, we have the white indigenous, which is almost gone and lost, and then we have the Asian indigenous. Four colors, four directions. And when you look at something like ayahuasca, it's a Native American medicine, South American, but Native American. Because America is, the way that I've learned it is that it's one huge. It's not like North. It's like one big continent.
Hmm.
Um, and all those back in the day, they used to do pilgrimages from Alaska to the bottom of South America. They would
Yeah.
train people to do that, and that would be their life purpose because it took like 20 years to get down there. They had trade routes all around, and then they built the Panama Canal and broke that up and all that. But anyways, so ayahuasca is like of that red direction, which is here to help us. It's here to help us live life and remember. And when you look at the white direction, like we didn't have anything like ayahuasca. What medicine did we use? Well, we used the mushroom. And you look at that, like there's a lot of talk about this right now with Christmas and Amanita and the mushroom that helped people
Mhm.
back then in the darkest times of winter. So when I look at like the indigenous roots of our culture, I would say mushrooms are our indigenous medicine. And I think that's why there's a reemergence right now. So it's built into our genetics, and it has something for us. Um,
The Amanita story, huh? The Amanita story. What that story went away really quickly when we modernized
yeah.
culture, didn't it? I
Hmm.
mean, if you really think about it, I don't even want to go there. We all know. So it's kind of a
Yeah.
beautiful story that we don't even tell that story anymore. So,
Hmm. Yeah, but it's coming back. A lot of people have been the last like 5 years. Every year, I see more and more people talking about it.
yep, true.
And it like in that way, the mushrooms they're all over the world too, though. Like every culture probably had some form of psychedelic mushroom,
Hmm.
and they're powerful healers, man. Like they're amazing. One of the way my teachers talks about it is that like his elder, who he learned a lot of these things from, native elder, was also his grandfather, and his grandfather was, an amazing teacher and carrier of medicine. And so the way that he would work with the mushroom spirit is when he would have a student who was really having a hard time connecting with the energy of truth, right? And really seeing truth as spirit sees it. And he would give them the mushrooms to help them connect with that truth.
Mm.
And when we connect with truth, something really powerful happens on an experiential level. Because we can say something like, oh, yeah, everything comes from God. Like we're all a slice of God. We all have a soul. And it's like everyone who's on a spiritual path maybe knows that on an intellectual level and wouldn't probably disagree with it
Right.
on some variation of that.
Mhm.
But there's a difference between, reading it in a book and being like, oh, yeah, I know that, and like knowing it here.
You're so true.
Here
Hmm.
is an experience. And
Hmm.
once you experience something, it changes you.
Hmm.
And so what happens is when, you can have that experience without mushrooms.
Hmm.
But a lot of people, there's such a gap that they need a bridge. And that's what I see the mushrooms to be. So his teacher would help people find that truth by giving them the mushrooms.
Hmm.
And then they would have that experience of truth and unconditional love and power,
Right.
and it would change them. So that's like how I relate to them, and that's why I see it helping people in such a foundational way, because we live in a world that's built on a lot of lies and a lot of
Hmm.
fear, and our definition of truth is very distorted. you know
Oh, yes,
it's a lot in
definitely.
right and wrong, and all this stuff. So when we can connect with the truth of God or creator, it changes us, and that is healing because we
Man, what
get
you
to.
said is really, really powerful, what you just said. And it really, I mean, because people can read books and they can say this and they can't say, I know that. And I see that a lot with the older generation. Oh, I know that. Or I was told that. Or I knew that. But, they really didn't experience that. And until you experience that, man, you don't know that. It's
Mm-hmm.
pretty powerful, pretty intense.
Yeah, and it's like, that's the thing is, as soon as someone says, "Oh yeah, I know that," then
Mhm.
they don't really know it.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, true. Because when
It's
you know that, there's just a different kind of glow. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like when you know that there's things you don't know, and so how can you know that you know anything? You know what I mean?
Mm,
Like there's
true.
always new layers of truth,
Always, always. But
and
that's
so
really deep.
yeah,
Yeah, that's deep.
so it's like you eat mushrooms a few times and you think you know some stuff, but when you really find truth, you realize how little you know, and then you see how much there is to learn.
Well, let's talk about this because somebody just asked a really good question here. This microdosing and macrodosing. I mean, I have my theories. I mean,
Hmm.
I believe microdosing is a personal. I think there's a lot of Stamets and other people's theologies out there how to use these, but I think it's you'll know after you know with microdosing. I think macrodosing for me, I mean, everybody says it's different 2 grams, 5 grams, 6 grams. You know, for me, I think a macrodose is getting you over that comfort zone where you're uncomfortable, but at least you're you're knowing something. You're learning something. All these should be a teacher, these teaching tools, and all these medicines for me have been a teacher. And when I'm macrodosing, that's my that's my class. Okay. This is why I went and I studied all week. I studied all month. Okay. And now I'm going to macrodose and I'm going to take my test. Okay. And then I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to learn and then I'm going to microdose a little more. And, because like you just said a little bit ago, I don't think I know too much because I'm
Mm-hmm.
keep on learning and I keep on learning. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So someone was asking about like the difference or what a microdose is.
they were just started. I think I need a macro day. And I've changed so much in 5 weeks already. So they changed so much over that 5 weeks of microdosing. So that they've been studying and studying and studying. This is how
Mm-hmm.
my perception is. Now,
Mm-hmm.
okay, go take the test.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, how do you
Yeah.
see that?
I've had like conflicting views about like the general use of macrodosing because on one hand I come from this really like ceremonial background where
Hmm.
the people who work in ceremony with these medicines do so with a tremendous amount of training and insight and lineage behind them. And the power in that is tremendous. And I see the value in that. And then I hear so many stories about people who have no idea what they're doing.
Hmm.
And in some ways, it could be like spiritually dangerous according to some of these traditions. And it may or may not be. However, then they have these incredible experiences and it can help them to heal and get free of addictions and trauma. And they're just doing it in their living room with no idea of anything.
Hmm.
And I'm like, okay, well, there's a wisdom to this medicine and it's working.
Hmm.
So I'm not sure. I'm still discerning how to like suggest that to people, and where to find the bridge with it. And what I come back to is like, follow your heart and
Hmm.
trust your intuition, trust the medicine. And if there's a call there, your soul and the spirit of the medicine knows better than me. So, and then, I just try to help people feel empowered in that way and build that trust so that they can go into it in surrender to creator, right?
Right. Definitely.
invoke
Definitely.
invoke that energy of love,
Yeah,
unconditional
for
love.
sure.
You know.
Uh, yeah, it's a. I see where you're saying there. I don't know if we all know yet. I think the studies, I think we really fucked up back in the 60s by stopping these studies. I mean, think how far evolved we would have been right now if we didn't stop these studies. I mean,
Hmm.
we'd be in a different world right now, but we can't go back. So we have to start where we are today. And, you know, I, for me, I think these medicines aren't going to kill you. So I think what
Hmm.
you said, follow your heart. And
Hmm.
if you're going to be ready, you're going to be ready. And your heart's going to know when you're ready. It's going to
Hmm.
know.
Hmm.
But don't go and jump on a 5 gram journey and think you're going to be a hero either.
Yeah, I just try to respect everyone's path and
Yeah,
everyone's free will.
right.
And do that. Because it when we start trying to say we know what's best for someone else, we run into problems.
Yeah, we do.
And like one of the things about the medicine, I have a lot of reverence for it, and it's helped me in my life a lot. And I also have this like I watched that program on Netflix, Michael Pollan. I forget what
Hmm.
it's called, Change Your
How to
Mind.
change your mind.
And on one hand, I loved how he approached it. And I loved how he talked about the medicine and the people's experiences was amazing. And I also felt this subtle like undertone because I often in these programs, it's all about beliefs, right? Like
Hmm.
when someone makes a TV show, they're trying to bring forth a certain belief system, either consciously or unconsciously, and that's both the beauty and danger of like programming, right? And so what I noticed in this undertone of the programming was this idea that this medicine is going to just save your life and fix your problems. And I see that a lot in people's psyche, even though they say, oh, I know it's not going to, but there's still like an unconscious belief and desire for that. And to me, that's like one of the real limitations of the medicine is that it's an external substance. And what I've found is the power is when we can source it within ourselves. And so that's why I see it as a bridge, and a path to walk for a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like something that takes guidance too, right? And how to integrate after
Right.
your experiences so
Well,
that you don't need the medicine, right?
that's the most important thing right there is that integration. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
integration's the key to all this. I feel I feel that so strongly. That's why we have the plant medicine path. That's why we've created all these different avenues because I've seen it myself. I've experienced it. I've seen these. I've seen people get thrown to the wolves after these great, beautiful experiences and just not know what to do with it and go back to that same lifestyle, if not worse, because you when you we had them, we had you. The universe had them at that point where we could have really saved them, and we didn't because we didn't integrate it. So now here we go again to that revolving door, and here we go again because I believe that lessons will not be learned until you learn them. They're always going to continue. They're always
Yeah.
going to continue until you learn them. I mean, they're going to continue. You're going to continue doing the same thing until you stop doing the same thing. So
Mm-hmm. The loop.
the
Loop.
loop. And we stay in these loops. And I stayed in these loops for 40 years, man. And 50 years. I was like, wow, what am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm grateful.
Mm-hmm.
Grateful for today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's where I'm
The,
at.
yeah. The power of waking up out of those loops is so
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
To
definitely.
that, and that's why truth is so healing. That
Yeah,
love.
yeah, we talk about that too. We were talking about something else. Michelle and me wanted to talk about um, the the masculinity part. Like, I just cried. That's part of what I do, though. It's part of what I used to not do before.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just some things that I think masculinity, becoming in touch with some of your femininity, is really important. So, women are very smart. They can teach us a lot, and that's
Mm-hmm.
what I said. They teach us a lot. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Women are amazing mirrors and
yeah.
teachers. I mean, they're the power, right? Like
Oh, they're amazing mirrors. Yeah. So,
they're the backbone. So a lot of respect for women.
yeah.
And the healthy masculinity. One thing I found is women are the healers. Like women are amazing healers. And I'm just speaking in a general terminology here because it's never so black and white. And men are often more adept at teaching, right? Like the mother will hold the child and give it life and nourish it, which is like a healing energy. And the father will take the child and teach him how to be in the world and be self reliant. And that's like the balance. And so sometimes I've seen this happen where, and myself too, where like I've needed healing and I've sought that out from women. And sometimes the inner child needs that nourishment of a woman's healing power, like true healers, right? And what I found is that a woman will never heal a man into being a man. Like it just won't happen, I believe. And a man needs to initiate a man into being a man, like because part of becoming a man is learning self-reliance and learning
Yeah.
how to source that energy through the earth,
Hmm.
through our connection with spirit, creator, and with our own soul. That's why in order to become a man in a lot of cultures, there needs to be some form of vision quest and initiation, a period of time where a man is alone with himself without distraction and simultaneously is held in a spiritual space by an elder man, by a mentor.
Mm,
Because the power of that psychic connection and the power of an elder holding a younger man in a space of ceremony and prayer. I mean, I've experienced it and it changed my life and it continues to change my life
mhm,
because I continue to have relationships with elders and male mentors because I don't think we ever outgrow that. It's important to always have people that can reflect things to us and, be in that space. And so, like as men, we need to learn how to be a healthy man. And
mhm,
sometimes that's through, like being with someone who's not healthy,
mm,
being with an unhealthy man to feel how unsafe that energy feels. And then part of it too is to be with the mirror of a healthy male role model. I remember like I really had a breakthrough after my fourth year of Vision Quest. So every year I'd go on Vision Quest and my elder would put me out and he taught me a lot of things. And he taught me through example, through ceremony, through the way he carried himself in his life, in the way that he would sacrifice for his family and his community and give himself with love to others.
mhm.
He taught me a lot in that kind of telepathic psychic way and through leading by example. And he gave me that opportunity to go out and speak with God for a few days because that's what the Vision Quest is. We give up food, we give up water, we give up our social life and our work and everything, and we're out on the hill
Mm,
without anything but, you know, our life and Creator. And that changes you. Something happens out there. It's a magical experience.
mm,
And we learn how to suffer and we learn how not to suffer. And one thing I learned on my Vision Quest that whatever hardship we're going through, it's always it always ends at some point. There's always a relief from it. There's always a liberation from it. And on the Vision Quest, third day, no food, no water. Especially me, I'm a skinny dude. Like I don't have much of a storehouse to live off of, and I'm just skin and bones out there. And it's hard, man. I mean, it's hard for me. Some people can fast without problem, but it's hard for me. And yet like some days the days would just take forever. It's like you're sitting out there watching the sun because you don't have much else to do.
right.
You try to pray and do the ceremonial thing, but sometimes you're just looking at nature. It's like I'll look at the sun and it'll be like here, and then I'll go through this big prayer and release and visions and all this stuff, and then I look up, I'm like, man, it's gotta have taken a while, and the sun's only moved like this much, and it's just so, and
Right.
it just feels like, is this ever gonna end?
Mhm,
And yet it always does. The
mhm.
last day comes and you hear the drumbeat of the community coming to get you, and they take you off the hill and it's over and you get to eat food again and go back to life, and it's never as bad as it seems in hindsight.
Right.
Never regretted doing those things.
I bet you those are pretty powerful experiences, those.
The Vision Quests.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's kind of
those
like
are.
a naked and afraid, huh?
I never felt afraid. Some people
No,
do.
I guess, right? Were you by yourself on those?
Yeah, I mean the way it works is the way that my uncle does it, and my teacher. It's a community thing. So every year he'll hold the Vision Quests, and there'll be a number of people that go
Hmm.
out. Usually about a dozen at it, but everyone has their own special spot where there's no one else around. And then there's a community that holds a fire and keeps the prayer alive, and they support you energetically. And then at the end of the vision, like they put you out and they walk you to your spot and leave you alone for however long you're out there, anywhere from 2 to 4 days, and then they come get you at the end. And So it's held in this really communal space. It's not like you just go out on your own and
Mm.
fast. It's very much mentored and guided. And the my uncle, the one who does the ceremony, he's holding a really strong space of prayer and ceremony the whole time. And but when you're out there, you're alone. Definitely, you know,
All
at
alone.
least physically. There's a lot of spiritual activity, and Creator comes and visits you. What happens is when you're out there, I mean, in any ceremony, it's like it's like a beacon of light, and so it calls the attention of higher beings, of love, and it calls the attention of Creator, and He recognizes us when we take that time out of our life to sit with Him. He loves that. It's like if you've ever, it's like, I don't know, the way I see it is like, if you have a kid and that kid like never visits you and they're just out living their life and then they come and visit and the parents are just overjoyed. It's like their son or daughter has come to visit and they get time with them. That's
Right.
how I feel like Creator feels when we actually take time out of our day or our life to be in ceremony or to pray or to just spend time with Him. I
Mm.
feel like Creator gets it's like a great joy for Him
Yeah.
and He loves seeing that. Most
Yeah.
people have turned their back on Him without even knowing it. And I
Without even knowing, right?
and people
Because He
suffer.
always asks us, just ask, and we never ask. I guess because some of us don't feel maybe we're worthy enough. I don't know. I don't know what that boils down to. But
Well, yeah, it is that the worthiness, self-worth is so fundamental.
yeah.
And it's interesting. This is something I talk a lot about, like with my clients and people that I work with, is that need for external validation and approval.
Hmm.
And how when there's that need, there's an inherent sense of like, I'm not worthy without it. And there's a lack of self-worth. And then yeah, we block out a lot from that. And then ironically, from my experience, the only way to find true validation is in the presence of God and in the
Mm.
presence of the Mother Earth and nature. They love us unconditionally, and so there's nothing we need to do, nothing we need to be, nothing we don't need to be. Like we can be whoever we are, and they're gonna love us just the same.
Yeah.
And that's true validation.
It is.
By
Yeah.
simply being alive, they love us unconditionally.
Yeah.
And people are terrified of that.
They
A lot.
they they really are. I think you know it takes a lot to understand a lot of this. Because all of us just kind of want to just go through the motions. But for me, I just want to keep learning more. You ever just want to keep learning more about why and who and what I am and what I do, and I mean, visions and creations are kind of my theme right now. Because I feel, and I mean, you're on the same. We were just talking about this before. We're in a new kind of fix for mental health right now, and I think we need to kind of get this right. And I think we're all kind of new here, and we're all kind of trying to figure this out and what to bring to the table. But I think for the most part, most of us have come together, and we kind of know what it is. We kind of know. So I mean, I don't know what your visions is. What do you see your vision as for the future? What is your visions holding, and what are you doing as you're creating?
Well, for me, I when I think about the future, I think about where the world's at. Sometimes it can be easy to get discouraged and feel like a bit hopeless about it.
Hmm.
And what's helped me overcome that is the knowing that for me, I live my life as best I can with the belief and the feeling that the one who is in control is the creator of all things. And to just keep coming back to that and to know that everything is perfect and I don't need to change anything, you know. And also what is in that perfection and in that connection and in the way that creator wants to move through me, what does he desire of me? And when I feel that, I feel the creator's greatest desire for us as humans is to remember who we really are and to live life in a loving, connected, joyful way. I don't believe that he made us so that we could just suffer and be in darkness. I
Right.
believe he wants us to live a different life.
Hmm.
And so I feel like that's the vision, is to support people who are ready for that and who desire that.
Hmm.
Remember how to live a loving life and
Hmm.
live a life connected to Creator. And, that's not for everyone. And that's okay. I mean, it is for everyone. And not everyone desires that right now. And it can be hard when we find that, to
Right.
respect that in someone else.
Mm.
It's like, hey, if you want to hang out and polish your golden turd of suffering, power to you. That's your choice. That's your free will. I choose something different. However, who am I to say that your choice is wrong or that you should believe what I believe? I think that's why the world has so much trauma, because there's been so much of that. Like, your belief is wrong, and you need to believe what I believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
When
just
we just believe to, when we let each other just believe with what they want to do, that's what they believe. I mean, we were put on this earth for that purpose. I mean, it's too much controlling going on, my friend. Too much controlling. And maybe we need to just control ourselves.
I mean, that's what I found, is that you can try all you want, but as far as I'm concerned, we have zero control over people,
Hmm.
places, and
Yep.
things, which is what
Absolutely.
everyone wants control over. They want
Yep.
to have this or that, and we can't control those things.
You will never get it.
The only thing
Yep.
we have control over is
Hmm.
this,
Yep.
is our inner world.
So
And
true.
what I've found is that when I can align my inner world, my outer world becomes more balanced.
Hmm.
And I find that the external world is simply a way to try to show me something and to push me deeper into myself.
Yep.
And so that's really the path that
Hmm.
I feel like we each need to walk, mind our own business, and follow the guidance of spirit, surrender to that truth, and live it as best we can. And that's how I see the world. Like,
Right.
when external things happen, I just do my best. I'm human. I don't have it all figured out, but I do my best to come back to this place of, like, what is spirit trying to show me in this? Because what I've found is that Creator is in charge, and he's in charge of those loving beings, star beings, or whatever, the angels, whatever you want to call these,
Hmm.
very angelic forces. He's in charge of those, and no one would deny that. But here's the
Right.
thing: he's also in charge of the darkness too.
Hmm.
Because how many lessons have you learned from the dark shit in your life? Like, that's where we get the biggest lessons.
So many.
So when darkness creeps into our life, rather than trying to push it away or be afraid of it or try to control it, I do my best to say, what is this showing me? Why is Creator bringing darkness into my life? Have I somehow faltered from my path? Am I not living in alignment with my prayer and my intention? Or is He trying to show me something deeper about myself so that I can grow into a greater channel for His love? And that's how I orient with it. And it helps me to find peace when dark things happen. And the funny thing is often when we look at that and we go inward and we do the work, right? Like, okay, this dark shit is happening and it's showing me my fear. Okay, let's work through some fear, right? And then you start to unpack the fear. And I start to work through it and shine that light in it and dissolve it. Then a lot of times the external chaos actually goes away, but
Hmm.
not because I'm trying to control it, not because
Right.
I'm trying to banish it. I mean, sometimes you got to do that, right? Boundaries are important. However, simply by taking responsibility for my life and taking responsibility for my inner world, a lot of times it does have an influence, kind of in an indirect way, to what's going on around me. So
Hmm.
I find it's like a win-win, personally.
Yeah. I
That's
tell
really
you one thing though, for yourself, you are you're very knowledgeable. You've like hit these points very solidly with very good explanation. And I like you're very humble about it. And it just shows that you're doing the work when you're that humble about what you're doing and you see how much more there is. It's pretty cool. It's really cool, matter of fact.
Well, it's like that's really the core of the the teachings that I've received is like
Yeah.
this elder. I sat with this elder in Michigan. He's an amazing man and an amazing healer and helper for his community. And he said the most powerful prayer is to start your prayer by saying, Creator, take pity on me. And some people have a problem when people pray like that. And what I see in that is that humility of like, you're coming before God to ask for something.
Hmm.
And, you know, it's probably your ego that's coming before God. And it's good to just ask for some pity because you don't want God to slap you too hard, you know?
Yeah.
And he slapped me in many ways.
Mm.
And it's always with love, but you get slapped enough times and you realize like there's easier ways to learn.
Yeah.
And I do my best to remind that because even to simply speak a word in a way is to create a division because the mind is based in duality. We can't really there's a certain level of spiritual understanding that is beyond words.
Hmm.
And so in a way by simply speaking, you know, I create separation. And so creator, take pity on me for creating more separation in the world, you know, and confusion. And maybe everything I'm saying right now is creating chaos and I don't want to do that, but I'm doing my best. So
I'm doing
that's
my
just
best.
kind of how I see things, you know.
Mm.
Um, and I find that that helps me to live a more loving life. And creator recognizes that when we live in those ways, you know, spiritual gifts and understanding and experiences come to us when we can be humble. Because if we're living from our ego, and that's not why we're here either, you know, that's just a side effect. Like, I'm not trying to get any power or gifts or this or that. I just want to live a good life, man. Like, I just want to live with joy and love and have things work out and be in connection and do what I'm supposed to do. So many people are like, I want to be a shaman and run ceremonies and shit. And it's like, you know, that's not humility. That's
Hmm.
a calling that comes as a gift when you
Hmm.
live a good life, you know? And so I'm not trying to be any of that stuff. I'm just trying to live a good life on behalf of Creator and have some fun and do what I'm supposed to do. And if I'm supposed to help someone, great. If not, okay, I'll enjoy my time alone then. You know, I'll just enjoy my time in meditation.
Mm. Alone
And
time is good time, isn't it? Alone
yeah,
time is
cool.
good time. We had one of our guests down here saying she hates to be alone. Sitting
Mhm.
alone feels like a major lack of self worth, but I think alone time is quality time.
I used to be terrified of being alone for that same reason.
Hmm.
I used to run from it, and it was like my worst nightmare because every time I was alone, all this fear and anxiety and insecurity would come up, and I didn't know how to source my own energy. So I was just living a life of being a vampire, man. Like, it sounds kind of harsh, but when we don't know how to source our energy from spirit and from earth, then we're just sucking it from our relationships. And I lived that for a long time because that's just what I was taught. And that's why when I was alone, I'd be like starved of that energy, right? And then I could only manage it for so long. And it wasn't until I worked through some of the traumas and fears, some of the pain, and started finding that light inside of my heart again and found that inner energy that I was able to be alone. And then it was a process where I was alone and it was not fun. Like, it wasn't enjoyable. I was on the floor crying most of the time. Like, there was all this backlog of emotional energy that had to get out of me. And this was over 6 months.
Hmm.
And a lot of abandonment stuff, a lot of fears, a lot of doubts. And the more I cleared that stuff, the more room there was for love. And
Absolutely. I mean, you nailed it so right there. I mean, when you're sitting and you hit a great timeline too, because people think, oh, you just need to go to the room, cry once. Man, think of how much pain and trauma some years is inside of you. I've sat in the room for, like you, for months and just crying and still cry to this day over the same things that you have to purge these things out for you. I say it all the time. It's not in our brain, it's in our bodies. We have to get it out of our bodies before we can clear our brain. I mean,
mhm,
these are deep wounds that just sit there and they got to be purged somehow. And alone time and being in that darkness and crying and whatever you need to do, that's good stuff. Not at
Hmm.
the moment, it doesn't feel that good, but believe me, believe you, and believe us that have been there. It's what you need to get over to that next level.
Yeah, it's a cleansing and a healing.
For sure, it is. There's no doubt, and it's one of the most beautiful cleansings.
Hmm.
So I think we say it in like going around our ayahuasca journeys. Most people purge and they like to throw up. Listen, I sweat and I cry and I. There's so many different ways to purge. It's not just vomiting. I mean,
Hmm.
tears
Yeah,
are
you know
tears are
what?
a beautiful purge.
Or screaming. You ever do that?
Screaming. Hmm.
Man, that feels good.
Yeah.
Getting in touch
Yep.
with that raw anger.
Yep. Yep. What's ever
Man.
in there. So, Ren, really great talking to you today. I mean, we'll continue. Let's continue maybe in a month or two and follow up and where you're at and what you're doing because we're
Hmm.
all creating right now. We're all new and
Hmm.
we're all just doing something that's bettering others' lives
Hmm.
because we lived it. We've seen it. We've we've done this and we've felt it. And I know what ayahuasca feels. I know what a deep psilocybin journey feels like. I know what 5-MeO bufo feels like seeing God. So I've seen these things and I know these things and I know there's a way to get, and that's my way how I got in touch with myself and who I love. And I needed that to for me to start working the program, the program of life.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, touching on that truth, man. It's where it all starts.
It is. It is. It gets you sometimes. It gets
Hmm.
you. So great talking to you today. Been a beautiful conversation. We'll do it again.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I'd love that.
Where can we find you at? Tell people where we
Yeah.
can find you.
Well, Facebook, you can find me just through my name. I'm sure it's probably on the link or something. And
Yeah.
then I do have a Facebook group that I've started that's all about these teachings and living a spiritual life,
And what
living
is
life.
that group?
It's called Living Life. I think it's Living Life is Ceremony, Finding Love, Connection, and Purpose. And it's on
There
my
we go.
profile. You'll find it on my profile.
And I'll put the link in Plant Medicine Path, and we'll go from we'll get you out there because I think what you do is amazing. I think you're a very humble man, and you work in this, and that's a beautiful thing to see.
Mhm. Well, thanks for having me on. It was great
Yeah,
to
thank
connect with
you.
you both.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Ciao.
Have a good